If music is sounding speech, there must be sentences and words in music. And actually there are, because we are talking about phrasing, and phrasing is just a sentence. And what are musical words? Let's see what I intend when I say a musical word. This can help you to understand how a music is composed for both sight reading and playing a prima vista, and for studying and learning a new piece. If you know what the single elements, the single words are, you understand what single phrases are, you can base your interpretation on that, and you can probably more quickly play the piece and understand what you have to do and what you want to learn from it. For example, I chose the G minor Prelude from Opus 114 by Ferdinando Carulli, which is that huge collection of 48 preludes and 24 morceaux, pieces or studies, which are more than that because they're really nice. You could play them as concert pieces as well. That's my example, so let's dive in. If you do a quick overview of the piece, you see that the rhythm is not too complicated in this. Time signature is 4 quarters. So here we have 4 16th notes in a group, grouped in 4 times in one bar. And this happens throughout the piece until the bar 4, where you have 4 group notes in 8th note. And that's it very much. We have mainly 16th and 8th note. If the note wasn't, bar 8 and 9. Here we have groups of 6 written out in 2 3-note groups as triplets. If you use rhythmic vocabulary such as conacol, for example, you could say takedimi takeyano for this. And for the 8th group, just half time, takedimi takeyano, which could be important in the last line. Takedimi takeyano, takedimi takeyano, takedimi takeyano, takedimi takeyano, tak. Bar 8 and 9, we have those triplets. Triplets in conacol are takide, 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 takide. So takide, 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 takide. Obviously, you don't have to use conacol. You could do any other kind of musical language, or not even none of them, just counting. But anyway, that's one possibility. One thing to see, so, are rhythmical words. This G major prelude is a melodic prelude. There are a lot of scales, so scales can be one word. At that point, it's probably interesting to talk about what a word is actually. A word is a combination of letters. But at least if you're not in the first grade of grammar school, you don't read letter per letter, but you see all the word as one. You can even understand and write a word if 2 letters are transposed in the wrong order. And sometimes we don't even notice that there is an error in orthography within this word and we read it correctly. In music, we can reach that same point. Let's see how that works with the scales, because scales in music are the alternation of line, space, line, space, line, space, going in one direction, and it's always the adjacent line or space that we have. So the first scale is in the first bar. We read in key signature G major and the highest note is G. At that point, as I see with one only view that we have a scale, I just go directly to the last note and see this is in D. Now I don't have to read, I personally, all the single notes because I know it's G major, there is no accidental within it, so it must be G major scale. There are no fingerings in it, except the 4th finger on the first note, so we are in first position. What I have to do is play G major, descending from G to D. And so I can play a whole musical word without having to read all the single letters or the single notes. Same happening in end of bar 2, E to G. So it's enough to read the first and the last note. You could combine that as well with the rhythm. I see I have a 4/16th note group with the E at the beginning. So this is the 5th note and the G at the end. So it's 6. And now I could play my musical scale word within a rhythmical word with this kotake di mita, kotake di mita. And so I combine the rhythmical word with the melodical one. Last example of scale word is in bar 9. In bar 9 we have a ascending scale doubled in third notes. I see those thirds immediately because thirds are 2 notes that are touching themselves, and they are both on a line or within a space. There's no accidentals again, so I just have to play the thirds in the G major scale. Now at that point, obviously, it's very useful if I have already studied some scales in thirds, as I did. So I can play it almost from memory because I studied those scales. And again, I just read the first note, which is G and B, and the last one, which is G and B again. So I just run through a whole scale G major in thirds. So melodical words as scales are very helpful when you can read them and put in your experience that you have with scales. Another musical word that's appearing quite often in this piece is a melodic arpeggio of a chord. You have to look for notes that are all in spaces or all on lines, and that lines and spaces are adjacent one to another. And that we have at the very beginning. The first 3 notes all in spaces, G, B, D. The next 3 again, G, B, D. This time all on lines. So there is a melodical fourth in this, which is normal if you have inversions of triads. So if you studied your theory, you can very quickly read this musical word. And again, you just have to look on the first and the last note. It's G and G. I can play it nearly by heart, even if it's on first sight. Other melodical arpeggi are in bar 4. And here you see that after this in-line, so to say, arpeggio of C major, it is interrupted in some way, going down thirds. Having analyzed and seen that, you can play it quite quickly. Other melodic arpeggios are in bar 7. And again in bar 8. And that's it. Chordal arpeggi are in as well. We have bar 5 following, G major, second inversion, C major, first inversion, G major again. Then this one, if there was an E in, we would have a diminished 7 chord. Here it's just a triad, a 3-note chord. It's actually not a triad, it's a 7th chord. But anyway, this sound is enough, harmonically speaking, for have that sensation of a dissonant chord that has to be resolved, and actually it resolves beautifully. Arpeggios is one very good possibility to look in a piece if you play it before you do the Prima Vista, and to detect as a musical word to learn quickly a piece. More than one note simultaneously, you have just a chord without having an arpeggio. And this occurs in this piece, for example, in bar 4, where we have this C sharp diminished in 3 notes, just played simultaneously. And the other place is the cadence at the end. I know that's a cadence because I looked in it before, but actually in this cadence what I can do is read the bass alone for a second. First grade, 6th, 4, 5, 1. Theory lessons are very useful because you can recognize cadences as a whole musical word. That cadence bass line has added two voices in soprano and contralto, which complete the chord. A third for G major, a sixth for E minor, an A minor triad over C, which combines to a C sixth, then D7, and G major. A cadence is probably more than a musical word. It's already a musical sentence, so to say. But anyway, you could see that quite quickly. In this case, it's a bit complicated because we have changing intervals. It's not very linear. It's not always the same. Here in this bar, you have to give a closer view and a more precise view in order to understand precisely what is meant. But anyway, you see, if you read the bass first, that we have a cadence and that those chords combine to the ending of the piece. This is a melodic prelude, so there's melody in there. We already talked about the scales as a melody. A scale is a very, very special, so to say, a neutral melody. It's more characteristic if scales are used in directions that are changing and inverting. In this piece, there is not so much melody which uses scales or arpeggi in inverted directions. It's quite straight. Well, anyway, this is meant as to be a prelude. So not the piece, so to say, the main piece, but a preparation of what follows. So here the melodic elements are few. But the elements that are in are, at first, in bar 3, we have the scale with this little formula, which prepares to the C major and to the fundamental of this arpeggio. Another melodic element is in bar 7, which is practically the same. G, F sharp, G, which is actually a micro cadence, so to say. We have the fundamental, the guide note, and the fundamental again, just to say, hey, this is G as my fundamental. And we have melodies, for example, by Johann Sebastian Bach beginning that way. This is, I guess, the fugue in C minor from the well-tempered piano, well-tempered keyboard, well-tempered harpsichord. You know what I mean. Another melodic line is bar 8. Which is a melody made of arpeggi, because we have this C major triad and this little melody piece at the end. So that has to be read with a bit more attention, actually. The fourth going up, so this must be within a triad, the fifth and the first grade. Then we go a third down and have a C in the bass, so C major, then D in the bass, B and D combines to G major even if there's no G in, and then D, C, A, which combines to D7 without the third F sharp. You can, if you are experienced enough, read that before playing the piece. And if not before playing it, as you play, you should try to understand what actually is in here. And that's the meaning of a word. Understand what you say. If you say a word without getting the meaning, you are just doing the sound. And that's like a parrot. Does he know what he says? The last melody line, so to say, is the cadence at the end. I already talked about the bass and the melody. In conclusion, I have my mental map of the piece. At the beginning, the G major melodic arpeggio. And that's it. Then the scale. I told you before, I just see the first and the last note, so I know I have to go down and know it by heart. Then, chordal arpeggi. with a little melodic element in the bass line. When reading this good, you know where to spend attention on. And for me, one point that is a little question mark actually is this E flat in bar 2. Because I think it could be an E natural. And in that case, it would make part of the scale. In the manuscript, it's still an E flat. And that would change the thing. Which makes it a really odd scale. Da, 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 dee, da, dum. You got da, 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 dee, da, dum. Bar 3, we have what we saw at the beginning with that melodic ending. Then C major melodic arpeggio going in thirds. And now this C sharp diminished. This is a special musical word because it would appear, for example, in a concerto for instrument and orchestra with that chord. At this point, the musician is ready to play his cadenza, so his free improvisation in the middle of a movement of those concerts. So under that point of view, we could eventually add some idea in interpretation, playing those arpeggios coming quite freely, that you say. And going out there. At the end, again, a melodic arpeggio going in thirds. We had that melodic line, a straight arpeggio going down, then F natural. If it is F natural, in the manuscript, I actually found F natural. But if the manuscript is not by Carulli, but just a copy of the period, we can't be actually sure. In modern editions, you might find the F sharp as well. And not. I do like very much the F natural, actually. Melodic arpeggio in C starting from E, which is interesting. The melodic cadential line. Scales in third and cadenza. This is the plan. At that point, I have my plan. Now imagine you did that work before playing the piece for the first time. In that case, you have actually the perfect preparation for a very good Prima Vista version of that piece, because you already thought about what is in there. What are the musical words? What is the at least grammar meaning of the piece? If we add that we have some kind of cadenza in there, we have a meaning that exceeds actually harmony and musical grammar to musical meaning, because we add some idea of a concerto, of a lacking orchestra, if you like, and anyway, the idea of an improvisational approach to the piece. Do that before you play it for the very first time, so you practiced sight reading, you practiced harmonic analysis, and you practiced how to prepare an interpretation of a piece, even if you don't know it. Okay, I would suggest do that and have a very good time with musical words that have musical meaning. And after having practiced the piece, just tell the story musically with your instrument. Thanks for watching. See you next time.